Good morning. My name is Bob Pace, and I'd like to welcome you to this show this morning, CPS, which is Child Protection Services, and how to fight and win. And we have a guest on the show. Her name is Summer Webb, and she's been on before, and she's going to continue her part two. So go ahead, Summer. It's all yours.
Good morning. How are you? Hope you had a
I'm
nice
just
holiday.
fine. It
Right,
was okay. It was doable.
right. um, where should we start?
Well, you
Um,
were talking about your third child, and
third case.
yeah, the
My
third
third
case
child.
is actually should yeah, okay,
Okay.
all right.
So, um, uh, 2020 was very difficult for me,
The
as it was.
COVID, yeah, the COVID, yeah.
Yes, it was for many people. I wasn't affected by COVID so much, but I was affected by a lot of other things. It was the end. Can you see me? Can you still see me, Bob?
Yeah, I hear you.
Can you still see me?
Yeah, I can still see you. You're fine. You're
Okay,
coming
good.
in perfectly. Yeah.
Okay. So 2020 was the end, or should have been the end of my second case.
Okay.
My son was still out of home, living with my mother,
Right.
and was due to go back with his father. Um, it was a very second case was very strange. The allegations were against him. It was um,
You froze for a second there, Grace. If you can still hear me, you've frozen. I mean, Summer, you've frozen there, Summer. Uh, there we go. We kind of lost Summer. Okay, she'll come back on. What I can do until she comes on is first explain you a little bit about the format we have here. We have guest speakers from time to time, and I discuss the CPS system, the Child Protection uh, System here, which is a branch of social services. And it's the branch that's supposed to help protect our children. But in my case, and a lot of other cases here, I'm speaking from California. Um, it is and I'm in the Southern California, so it's LA and Orange County, and it has not worked out fairly for me there, and I imagine it's a lot of problems other places. And so we have an attorney, Vincent W. Davis, who has a law firm, and he offers a free consultation for 30 minutes to talk about strategies of how to get your children back or what you need to do. The number is 888 It's on your screen there. And um, he'd glad to talk to you. Also, there is a website that you can you can make your appointment and so forth, and you can schedule your private time with Vincent W. Davis. Now, when Summer comes back, she is a mother, boy. Uh, I have actually two children, and she is in her third case, and so it's been a real struggle for her. And anyway, in my case, when I was involved in the child protection agency, I knew nothing about it, and I was blindsided, and I was done by a witch hunt. And it all starts, um, you know, with a report. It doesn't have to be a factual report, but it's a report of some type of abuse, and the abuse can be uh, the following, things can uh, do there. I did not know. I wish I had. One thing I wish I had is an attorney in the beginning process. I would have known um, how to handle the particular case. And um, the child abuse, um, there are, I guess, four ways that they look for. One, they want to see if the child's immediate danger, such as maybe something from um, the corporate punishment went too excessive. Maybe the parents were abusing the child or something that says physically. There's also the sexual abuse. One of the parents is abusing the child sexually. That's another grounds of how CPS can get involved. Um, there's also the lack of food or housing or care for the child. That is another area that they look at there. And um, in my case, the only thing they could come up with, and I don't know why this is the case till to this day, was that my children were in risk because of the clutter in my home, meaning the sense I had boxes stacked because my parents had recently, well, one of my parents was dying, the other one shortly thereafter, and I had taken their possessions for safekeeping for other family members, and I have a home that was already full of things, and so adding their things made the problem worse. I did originally have them out very nicely organized on the driveway with a tarp over it, but the neighborhood association complained about that, so I had to move it inside, and some on the porch and some outside. And so um, what had really happened is some family members called in and made allegations that weren't true. I think one of the allegations I heard was that there was no utilities, and they're perfectly uh, connected, and there were. I have bills show I paid for them, so there was never a problem there. Were the children fed? Yes, there's always food in the house. The rooms were clean. There was nothing in there that would endanger the child. There's no physical abuse and no sexual abuse, even though they got the police department involved, and they added a charge, which is their SOP. They usually try to put charges on there as trading or trump cards to have you accept something and reduce your time or whatever it is. And so they tried to make sexual allegations against the mother and the father, me, and our three children, well, yeah, three children living at the home. Um, uh, that was cute. So there was three counts for each of them, and so the CPS got carried away um, because uh, the uh, there they're struggling, and they went ahead and I talked to tried to talk to the supervisors and so forth, and um, it it was sort of a wasted time. It kind of rocked the boat. I even went and talked to the guy in charge of the CPS where I'm at, and in his what I call the Taj Mahal of the building. It's very nice, ornate glass, and you can see where all the money was spent. And he was just useless. I did meet with him. I met with the other supervisors who never followed through, and I felt like Alice in Wonderland. I was down this rabbit hole and couldn't get out of it. And it first started off with jabs. Um, the family members would call in, and of course, the family members were in another part of the state, far, far away, and they were hearing or hearsays, and they always were interfering with us and our children, with my wife who had met me and we had married and so forth. So one half of the family wasn't very supportive, and they always tried to. I don't know if it was jealousy or something, but they always try to take our children, and so they thought they'd be smart. One of the family members is a social worker. I don't know if she works in CPS, but she was the instigator. And then, my wife's mother and father were very unsupportive, and the reports came in. And of course, CPS has to follow up. They have to follow up, and depending on how severe the case is. But one of the reports was there's no electricity turned on and so forth. The only time I lost electricity is that, unfortunately, part of my issues why I couldn't put things in storage and like that was I lost my job, so funding was an issue. And eventually I had to sell my house. But during my selling house, there was a person that wanted my house, and so they cut all the wiring in the electrical box so that I would have no electricity. So I had to pay a guy $2,500 to redo the wiring and fix it. Then they tried to break down the front door and broke the lock. And then they tried to put stickers on my cars, and there was definitely harassment. There's a lot of illegal things going on, and the police, didn't really protect you or anything like that. No one at once reached out and offered assistance, like, "Oh, you're back, Summer. Good. Okay." I was talking about my case a little bit.
I
Let's
was
all go back
listening.
here to Summer Webb, who has been a guest before, and she was talking about uh, I guess, third case. Am I saying that right?
This would be the second and third
Okay,
case going
the
on here.
second case, but
Right.
this
So
is still
basically,
involving your son,
this is
right?
my
Okay,
son, yes.
okay.
So uh, COVID hits, and my son was exposed. I mean, this is in March of 2020. So we're at that specific time where everything was just happening. And
Hmm.
he was on a visit with his father, so he ended up staying on that visit with his father. And there was a hearing, I believe, in July of that year, where they decided to leave him where he was. I had moved out of the county. I had moved up north about 4 hours, and I was still, um, working my case plan. I was pretty much done with my case plan. The only issue that I had was testing, and I kept being told repeatedly that I could not test in the county that I was in, that I had to test in the county that the case originated in. And
Well, excuse me one
it-
second, Summer. What
sure,
was the second case, the charge? What were they accusing you of?
they were actually accusing it. Initially started off because my son was late to school, and my husband and I had moved back in with one another after the last case had ended. Um,
Right.
and they were very, very mad about that. Come to find out, when they came to our house, that the caseworker in the first case had not entered any of my compliance evidence in into anything. So it looked as if I had done nothing.
Hmm.
I was able to provide this new emergency caseworker with all of this evidence. And so when we met in this initial meeting, um, there were some department heads that were a part of it, and they apologized to me, saying that it was a case of covering their own asses. Those were his exact words, and that the department was going to have to earn my trust, and that it was really unfortunate that things had happened the way that they happened. Um, I had many concerns about the initial case, first caseworker. I thought that he was biased against my family, because we are interracial. My husband is white, so my child would be biracial. Um, and anyway, he had even gone so far as to stay on our case after it was time to be handed over to a continuing services worker, because he, quote unquote, took a personal interest in it,
Hmm.
which I understood to be something that they're not supposed to do. Um, they're not
Very
supposed to
vindictive and a witch hunt. Yeah.
right, and they're not supposed to take personal interests into these cases. I mean, it's supposed to be unbiased, you know. And so the second case, when they came to the school to interview my son, they did so without another adult present. So they didn't notify us. They went to the school as if it was under exigent circumstances and interviewed my son without another adult present. My son was, I believe, 7 years old at the time, and he was quite upset at what had happened to him the first time. And so, in his little 7-year-old mind, he thought it would be a good idea to make up some story in which he had jumped in between his father and I, and no, no, you guys, we all have to get along together, and became the hero of the story. The caseworker apparently could not discern truth from a 7-year-old's imagination, and thus um, my son was removed from school and was not sent to my mother's, which was where he had been the first time, but instead he was sent to my father's. Um, and he was there about 6.5 weeks. Um, that was really problematic because my father's wife and I, we are not, we don't get along. We're only about 5 years apart in age or so, and we've never enjoyed a particularly close relationship. Um, and
Okay.
she was doing things in the 6 or 7 weeks he was there that were quite problematic. She had put him in a after school program that we had taken him out of prior because of the way that they were handling the kids. She refused to put him in the program that he was in. Um, she didn't want to drive. It was about a mile and a half away from the school, and she just said that she didn't want to drive. Um, she met the program director there, and everything was good until she began to speak hostile of me. And the program director let her know, hey, I don't have any problems with her. I'm actually quite friendly with her. Everything changed. And then so it was becoming problematic. We had him moved to my mother's, which was not the caught between a rock and a hard place. My mother and I had a very, very tumultuous relationship, unfortunately. And there were a couple of instances that were very um, traumatic, which my son happened to be present for. One of which happened actually in court um, later that fall, in which she had to be pulled off of me by the deputy, talking about in the court in downtown LA in front of everybody. She was just verbally attacking me. Um, and so, despite my mother's personality, she still remained. So, like I said, COVID came. Um, my son ended up staying with his father. I moved to another county. I was trying to continue my plan, my case plan, but they would not set up testing for me in the county that I was in. They were acting as if it was unheard of and could not be done. I had done my research. I knew that it could be done. I had actually gone so far as to personally contact CPS in the county that I was in and let them know what my situation was. But they still would not acquiesce. They just would not allow for me to test where I was living. And like I said, it's about 240 miles away from Los Angeles County. And so um, in in September of 2020, actually in July of 2020, I found out that I was pregnant. Um, and Labor Day weekend of 2020, I had a miscarriage on the 6th of September. On the 13th of September, my mother died out of nowhere. She uh, she died very suddenly, and it was, you know, catastrophic. Needless to say, um,
Hmm. Hmm.
she died of a very rare cancer, and about a month later. we laid her to rest, and I had to go in for testing, genetic testing, to see if I had this cancer. And during that testing, surprise, via ultrasound, I found out that I was in fact still pregnant.
Mm.
I was pregnant with twins. I had lost one of the twins, but
Oh, okay.
at this time I was still pregnant, and so and of advanced maternal age, as they said, it was a geriatric pregnancy. I was in my early 40s, 41 or 42, um, and terrified because I felt very strongly that they were going to come for my child. And the stress of that, the stress of where I was living at the time, I wasn't stable. It was interim housing. Um, the stress of everything. New Year's Eve of 2020, I suffered a heart attack while I was pregnant.
Mm.
Um, and my baby was fine. Um, she suffered no, um,
Effects.
nothing happened to her. Yeah, no effects. I later find out that the baby sends like stem cells to the mother's heart to repair it, which I thought was super cool. But this is when I find out that my heart's not going to be able to sustain um, um, the pregnancy, and that there's
Okay.
a pretty good chance that I'm going to end up delivering early. Um,
All right.
and I do. About 7 weeks later, while the second case is still ongoing, the case was supposed to end in January. For some reason, they pushed it to to April. Um, and I delivered. My baby was due in April. I delivered in early February. She was 32 weeks and 2 days, and she was perfectly healthy, about 4.5 pounds, which is really big for a preemie that size. And she was in the NICU, but she really didn't need to be there. She was just gaining weight the whole time. She had no trouble breathing. Her biggest problem was that she pulled her own feeding tube out at 3 weeks. That's how strong and coordinated she already was. She was a very healthy baby. She
Mm-hmm.
had no neuro issues. She was breathing on her own from day one. Um, and I was elated. I had a daughter. My mother always wanted a girl, so
Mm-hmm.
the irony was not lost. Um, CPS showed up in my hospital room, I think the second day. Um, they were talking about, oh, well, you didn't tell us you were pregnant. I became quite aggressive, actually, and kicked them out. And my husband, who was there with me, because again, we are still married, but we had been separated by force. And this baby was not his baby. He was aware of it, but he was there and for support because, like I say, I delivered in LA when I was there on a to visit my cardiologist team. So I delivered early. I wasn't expecting to deliver in LA. Um, I Things became very tense because I knew that these people were here to steal my daughter, and I wasn't here. I hope I didn't freeze again. Can you hear me?
I still hear you. Whoops, we lost you again. Boy, it is a very difficult subject to talk about. Your children. Her case is really compounded because when you're under CPS, you're not supposed to have more children. And I think they're going to take away her child right away after it's born. It's really a terrible, terrible thing what CPS does. And hopefully, Summer will be back. Um, but so far, what I've heard from her is that she hasn't endangered her child. Um, the process of CPS is supposed to follow certain guidelines. And when they are notified of child abuse or neglect, they have to investigate. But it has to be certain types of 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 um, of reasons. And again, was there sexual abuse of the children? Two, is the child neglected physically? Maybe the punishment was too excessive or something like that. And then, three, does the child not have a home or no food or no utilities, no clothing? Is he being neglected? In my case, it's just because I had stacked boxes that were 4 feet high. Even though my children were higher, they were worried that they may fall on them. So that's the only thing that they could find wrong in my case. And then they're supposed to really get the family back and not try to take the children out of out of the home. And I found just the opposite. There's all these things that you could look at with CPS, and they tell you one thing, but they do another thing. From actuality, they want to take your child away because they get money. And I hate to say it, but CPS in the LA and Orange County area, California, is strictly for money. Because the longer the child is taken, if they're put in foster care, they get more money. And so that's what they were trying to do with our children, my children, who were very loving, and they were taught terrible things. They had Boys Town um, bid on taking care of children, and they were cheap, but they left out a lot of things, and they later no longer continue to do it. But it was really my experience with Boys Town for the first time was sad because what that Boys Town is founded on is boys and girls that don't have moms or dads that are around. They're neglected because they're left at home alone or they're not neglected and stuff. Our kids were never home alone. We took them to school. We were involved in back to school nights. We were involved in all their activities, AYSO soccer, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, all these activities. So they were never um, neglected or left alone. Somehow, this particular um, social worker believes the alleged phone calls so bad that they got the police involved. And then the police went on a wild goose chase and really disappointed with the police. They, to me, they in our particular city, they are very, very, very bad. Um, One time I had left some money in a bag and stuff, and it got picked up by somebody, and they found him. They got his driver's license, and he was in L.A., but they did nothing. They did nothing to track him down. I lost about $25,000, and the police didn't. The detective never called me, never followed. It's just like everything I've been experienced with them. They have been really really bad. Um, they don't know about crowd control or about you know um, yeah, I don't know. Policemen do a thankless job, and I think policemen are great in their heart, but somehow they either steer the wrong direction, or there's a lot of cases where the police are abused by citizens, and are taken advantage of, and so forth, and they're shot at and killed at all the time, and so. But I don't want to be talking about that because it's different in every state. The main focus is, of course, CPS, and you know, the purpose of the child protection agency is to make sure the children are safe and to reunite them with their family, not take them apart or break their family apart. In my case, it was strictly how can we break this family apart? How can we keep them so long there that we can get the money thing? And until I got an attorney, and my attorney was Vincent W. Davis from Experience. He's an excellent attorney. He's a trial attorney, and he has a lot of other attorney friends that are really good, and they can help you get your children back. One of the first things I was told that I didn't have to let CPS into my home or answer the phone calls. And when I did receive something in writing, then that should be turned over to the attorney. You meet with them, and they will do strategies. You don't have to let them in the house. And the same thing with the police department. You don't have to let them in the house. They need a search warrant. And they're not your friend. They're not honest, and they're deceitful. I'm speaking from my experience, but I've also interviewed or talked to probably close to or listened to over 100 people. And these people from all across the country. I mean, it's so bad that even the Indian reservations, um, CPS take their children, and they're not supposed to because the tribe is supposed to take care of the children on the Indian reservations. So if your tribe and you're registered with your tribe, you can turn it over, and your tribe will do an investigation. But with the Lakota Sioux in the Rosebud Reservation, it was terrible. Oh, it was terrible there. I know from firsthand experience. And the city where I live in is the highest place for child abduction. So there is a reason to maybe have CPS involved, the police involved, because we do have a lot of children that are kidnapped and sold into slavery around the world. And um, I'm not against the idea, but what we need to do is we need to elect officials and get people that are um, are well versed in how to keep a family together. The purpose of people when they get married or living together is a family unit. And we're not born with all the material. We do take classes and we do learn how high school are doing better with classes. But what really needs to be done with families is education. And um, and if the parent doesn't have the skills, there's courses they can take and things they can do, and that's what CPS should be concentrating on. My children were ripped out of their school wrong. That should never have happened. My young son, who was with me at the time, was taken from me, and my wife was stranded because I couldn't go down and pick her up because she was out doing her hair, getting done, and so forth, and I was picking the children from school, and uh, it was really, 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 really hard, and how they did it was just amazes me, and that's why no matter what I did or said or wrote or anything like that, until I had an attorney, there was no success in it, and um, this particular show is formed by Vincent W. Davis, the attorney that will offer a free consultation for 30 minutes. You just call in 888-888-6582, and they'll schedule a time with him. And if not him, maybe one of his other attorneys could help. He has a law firm, and he's a trial attorney. And he's also compassionate. He has children himself, and he knows about the system. The thing I found out is the judge that heard my case was a judge. His only background was uh, car damages, and somehow he was elected as a judge. And it's sad because most people don't take the time to elect their officials, and so you have a lot of places where it's the wrong kind of judge in there. You need a judge who's compassionate, who has a good background in family law and family service and so forth, and it's fair. One thing you'll notice at the agency um, that I was involved with, uh, they would channel people in like cattle. It felt like you're out in the hall and you're with people from all walks of life, people that couldn't speak uh, the common language, and people that meant well, but maybe they had a hiccup, and they could be corrected manners, but they're never allowed in the courtrooms. Only the attorneys are, and the attorneys will say 5 or 10 minutes about something, and they'll talk among themselves. But I found out that the public defenders, the social workers, the CPS social workers, and the judge, they're all in cahoots. They go and play golf together. They get rewards and bonuses. They succeed in keeping your child in there. I know sounds terrible, but it's true. I saw the Gucci purchase. I saw how one woman who was not married, that was very young, they didn't have experience, destroyed my family. And today, even though it was only 2 years in the legal system, it started in 2015 and in 2017, the end of that. So 15, 16, 17, 3 years. It was finally over, but it's not over because afterwards, two of our children, one of them was convinced to divorce their parents at age 12 and adopt, and so badly changed their name and so forth. The other child was a lot older, and that child was involved in the case. But we lost our 12-year-old girl who's now 21. We've lost even our girl that now is 33 or 30, excuse me, 36, and she was gone at age 25. Um, but our two remaining children um, are still suffered effects. My son, who's 24, um, after 4 years of college in his senior year, he decided to drop out, and he didn't know why he was in school. And the effects of foster care really affected him. He was taught, as well as his brother, his young brother, that when you see your parents, not to hug them. And oh, good, we got Summer back.
I'm so
Summer, can
sorry
you hear
about that.
me?
I can hear
No,
you. Can you hear me?
yes, I can hear you fine.
Okay, good.
Welcome back, Summer.
I
And
apologize for that. So let me
go ahead.
get expeditiously. So, um, like I said, they came for my daughter. Well, under the auspices of they're not going to take her, but I knew they were going to take her. Um, they had like I've always felt very strongly that it's personal. Um, I had never harmed my son. I never put my son in harm's way. Nothing had ever actually happened to my son. Um, like I said, the second case was about failure to protect. I got failure to protect, and my husband allegations that were sustained against him were physical and emotional abuse. His case plan was one thing, and it was only to see a therapist to address why he allowed me back in my son's life. He didn't get any domestic violence. He didn't get any anger management. He didn't get anything. He just got the one thing. I got the same case plan that I had gotten from the case before. I was irate about it. We the caseworker even told my husband that I was right, that I was too smart for my own good, that I shouldn't had have to that our child shouldn't even have been detained because there was no reason to detain him, and that I shouldn't have had to do the case plan. I ended up getting it changed, and I can't remember the term. It's a Latin term, but I ended up having the record reflect um, that it should, but it was too late because we were already that far in. So my daughter comes. Um, they are they're already hostile towards me. The supervisor didn't even really know my name. She thought I had 4 kids. Um, my daughter was removed from the hospital, very under cloak and dagger type of situation. She was supposed to go home with my mother's partner, um, who had been my mother's partner since I was 14, so about 30 years at that point, who had been visiting her at the hospital daily and bonding with her. And then the day that she was to be discharged from the hospital, she got a call that said that my baby was going home with someone else, and that was that. We didn't know where she was for 6 days. They didn't tell us. Um, they didn't care. My daughter's about 6.5 weeks old at this time, and I'm besides myself completely. Um, Here comes the detention hearing. We find out that the reason that they're detaining my daughter is because my physical environment, my physical residence, poses a threat to her physical and emotional well-being. And then they went on to list my physical residence as the same address as the hospital. Nobody caught that. That should have been obvious that there was a problem there. But nobody caught it. Um, we ended up having the judge moved, picking a different judge because it was a judge that was on our other case, and she already, had an opinion of me. And so we picked a pretty fair judge, actually. Um, but it didn't matter. The family member that my daughter was placed with was quite hostile towards me, and from day one, refused to engage in the reunification process and proceeded to obstruct it at every given turn. She had my child airlifted to another hospital, claiming that my child was having seizures and projectile vomiting. Um, my child had no neurological issues while she was in the NICU. And they found while she was in the hospital again that she had it was never replicated. This only seemed to happen in front of her. It never happened again. Not once did it happen again in the hospital. I was very vocal that I thought that she, and I am not a doctor, but I'd known her and I'd seen her with her own personal children, um, who were also preemies when they were born. And I felt that she was kind of projecting things onto my daughter. Um, they were also trying to claim that my daughter was born suffering from um, being addicted to drugs. At no point in time
Oh,
whatsoever did my daughter ever exhibit any type of withdrawal syndrome of any time.
well, there never was a test, right? The child was not tested.
Well, apparently they said that there was a test when I came into the hospital, but that test very clearly was marked to not be used in a legal setting, and that further confirmation testing would be needed in order to do so, and they never bothered to do it. And CPS didn't have the test. All they had was an affidavit from somebody else that had worked in the hospital. I didn't even know if they were in a labor and delivery, but they took that whole thing and ran with it. She was not suffering from any type of withdrawal. She wasn't suffering from um, any of the classic signs of neonatal. Um, what's the word I'm looking for? When babies are born with drugs in their system, they go through really disturbing um, process. My child didn't have any of those problems whatsoever. I was at the NICU every day, every single day. In fact, they used to make fun of me because I had brought so many clothes and stuff for her. I was right there. At first, I was going to breastfeed, and then DCFS came and said no, so I couldn't breastfeed. But I was there with her. I I mean, like those were some pretty really special days. So when this family member gets her, I
Hmm.
get a message from this family member's cousin
Hmm.
telling me, "Hey, did you know that so and so adopted a baby?" I didn't. Yeah, you know, where do you hear anything about it? No, I didn't. Well, what does the baby look like? Oh, well, she's very, very fair skinned. She looks about white. Both of my children are very, very fair in color. I asked
Hmm.
what her name was, and they told me, and I'm like, no, that's actually my baby. And she said, you need to get your child from this person immediately. She's already saying that she's a doctor. Um, she's trying to steal your baby. This went on, and everything just escalated. She then started to claim that I was harassing her and threatening her. I've known her for 20 something years. I've never harassed her nor threatened her out of respect to um, the person who she's married to. Um, but it didn't matter. Um, I actually had a
But
public attorney.
attorney at this time? Yeah. Did you have
Yeah,
an attorney at this?
so I did, and I got an attorney from the same firm that gives all parents attorneys, except for one thing. This attorney that I have is actually a staff attorney, and she was just supervising initially. She saw what was going on, and she took it upon herself to take my case on because she could see that this was not going to be um, anything less than a doozy. And she has worked for me. And they couldn't boot her like they booted all the other attorneys that were in my favor because, like I say, she's supervising attorney. So she actually um, gets out there, gets in the trenches, and files for me. When she could see that the other county council on the other side, they kept moving. She kept saying I was changing. What do you call it? Changing medical appointments, and it was determined. No, I had found out that they had illegally had the hospital cut me off from my records. They had infiltrated my records. I was able to do so by going into this program, which could see logins. I found duplicate logins. I contacted the hospital about it. The hospital actually issued me an apology in writing, had my access restored. And they said that I was interfering with appointments. I never did. All this in an attempt to get my education and medical rights taken from me,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
which they were successful in doing via ex parte. When they came the last time, my attorney said, no, you're going to have to show some proof of it. So we had a hearing, and in that hearing, the caseworker and this family member perjured themselves. Not less than 3 weeks prior, they had just told the judge that I, ex parte, mind you, that I was threatening, so forth and so on. And then on the record in the hearing, uh, said, "Oh no, we never said that."
Mm-hmm.
I was I was flabbergasted. I mean, I know that the judge has a lot of cases, but you would think, but no, believe them. And so then my education and medical rights were then taken from me. And
Mm-hmm.
then, visitation, it was always about her and coming to her. Um, it was never, uh, she just, this person did not want me to um, bond with my child. She didn't want me to have my child. Um, and I started to mentally deteriorate at that point. Mind you, my poor son, who had been praying for his sister, um, the effect on him was just as deep and as profound. And I did not see my daughter from the time she was about 7 weeks to the time she was, I believe, like 7 months. And when I did see her, the very first time I saw her, she looked at me and like blinked as if she couldn't believe her eyes, um, and reached out towards me. And
Mm-hmm.
it was, I mean, it was just, it was something else. They had done a paternity test
Mm-hmm.
in this interim. And this is one of the things that was very strange. The paternity test, and the person who had taken upon themselves to identify themselves to CPS as her father. Um, the results were supposed to come back within like 5 to 10 days. They didn't. So they postponed not one, not two, but I believe three different hearings. So the test was done at the end of April,
Mm-hmm.
and mid June, but first day of summer or so, was another hearing, the third one. And again, these test results were not in. This is what I was told by his attorney, my attorney. Okay. The test results still weren't in. They were going to have to do another continuance. I was on the phone waiting for the judge to come into chambers when the line
Uh-huh.
dropped.
Okay.
And when they called back 5 minutes later, my attorney, mispronouncing this man's name, said that the test indicated that he was not the father. And I said, absolutely, that's a load of crap. There's absolutely no way. Come to find out through my own research that they used what's called a 730 to order this paternity test, um, which is not usually how it's done. And they locked up their results so that I couldn't see them, he couldn't see them, that no one could see them unless we petitioned the judge to see them. The clerk, I spoke to the court clerk. She said that was highly unusual and that I should come down and look at my case. Um, in person because I can view all the things in person, which
Mm-hmm.
which I did. I come to find that a month prior to when they said that the results were in, the results had actually come in and had been entered into court a month prior than when they said that they had.
Okay.
And um, there was a document that was filed by minors counsel, um, like a 388, in which the parents listed were myself and this other person, not alleged. This is after the results had come in. That's when I found that out, and nobody could explain to me why 730 was used. And every time I tell an attorney this, they're like, "No, you must be mistaken." I'm not mistaken. I know what they did, and I have my own reasons as to why they did it.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't want this case to leave the county. Later on that year, I have a hearing, and I am blessed with the unheard of. I was allowed to speak for about 45 minutes before the judge. Uh, This rarely ever happens. And the judge heard me, and he then asked county counsel, basically he said, why, if you think this woman is such a drug addict, would you want her driving 500 miles a week for testing?
Wow.
She
Wow.
doesn't,
Five.
you can't keep calling her a drug addict because you want to,
Mm-hmm.
because you don't have any tests. Um, Mind you, I have no criminal record whatsoever. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I have been seen by a addictionologist. I have been evaluated by the department's own substance abuse evaluator, who indicated that I don't have any substance abuse problems. I
Okay.
have I have a severe heart problem in which substance abuse would be akin to suicide.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't. There's no reason to continue to claim that I use or misuse any type of drugs other than this is their linchpin, and they won't let it go. The judge ordered that they tried to say that I was lying about where I lived. The judge said that I had proven it a year before in another case, and they were ordered to move the case to the county in which I was living in. Um, and I knew that they were going to panic, and they did. They basically tried, instead of going through the protocol, what's listed like in the rules of court in terms of what to do to move the case, they just went on their own limb. The caseworker was trying to call my landlord and see where I was living without me being there, without my permission. My landlord didn't know what was going on. All she knew was that she wasn't going to break the law. Um, so then they went back and said, well, she won't let us see where she's living, which wasn't true at all. They just needed to verify my residence. The place that I was living was temporary, and I wouldn't be living there much
Mm-hmm.
longer. They just, they made it seem they do what they always do, which is just kind of, say things, leave things out, omit things in order to, you know, propagate their narrative. So um, I don't end up, the case doesn't end up moving. My husband, mind you, who we're still married legally, would then be identified as her presumed, would take the status of presumed parent status. Um, when he showed up way back when, a year prior, the very first hearing, he was denied counsel. The attorney
Wow.
told him the attorney told him he wasn't eligible for counsel. And I told him that's wrong. I'm a very forceful person. He's not me. I kept telling him they were wrong. And I was right. Um, because all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a year and a half later, they started calling him the alleged father. The attorney, head attorney, started apologizing to him. Oh, how are we going to right this wrong? This is a huge, 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 huge problem, right? And so what do? They give him the same exact attorney who had told him that he wasn't eligible for attorney, who then goes into court, and instead of being honest, she, and falling on the sword, she allowed the judge to just eviscerate him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to this day, she still has not told the truth. I've had appeals filed in this case that I have no idea what they're about. I never once spoke to an appellate attorney, not
Mm.
once. They've gone all the way to oral argument, and I lost both of them. Understandably so, after I read the decision, because the way that they presented them, no one ever contacted me. I found out about one and tried to contact the appellate attorney, never returned my calls. The second one I didn't even know about. It just kind of got stuck in there. The same thing with him.
Mhm.
So they are not, it's my firm belief that they do not want me to have my daughter and have not from day one. And I have had a 0.26 hearing that's been scheduled for, she'll be 3 in February. And they've been trying to terminate my rights, I think, since October of 21. And maybe it's my mom acting as an angel. I don't know what it is, but it keeps getting postponed. Um, keeps getting postponed. RFA would not approve this family member, um, whatever. So that was had to be dealt with for a while. Just these little things keep happening. And again, just about 2 weeks ago, we had another hearing. Supposed to be my 2/6 hearing. It was postponed again
Yeah. Yeah.
until March. So I'm still fighting um, that fight.
Right.
Um, but it's torn um, my family apart. I no longer have a relationship with this family member that's married to this person now.
Mm.
We used to be very, very close, and we're not that close anymore,
Oh boy.
unfortunately.
Oh boy.
Um, yeah, it's actually quite painful, and I'm
Yeah.
just kind of in this. I'm in this position of trying to rebuild um, while having to deal with the department. I'll say it now. I've said it
So
before.
today, so today, where are you at? We have about 3 minutes left in the show,
You
and
guys stop. Naturally, stop. Today, come here. Today, today I am. Hey, stop it. Today I am still. There's been a third case open on my son, which they weren't going to give me reunification on, but I fought for it, and um, they just naturally. Hold on a moment. Stop. They on.
yep. Well, we got some dogs there involved. This has been a very interesting case. So she has a third case now involving her son. So she has a daughter and a son, and it seems like CPS is determined to take everything away from her. She is really fighting a
There.
tough case. There she is. She's
Yeah,
back.
that took that time. Right now, as it stands, like I said, this third case with my son, they were not going to give me reunification, and then lo and behold, the very first court date, which it's 6 months behind. Um, always guys. Hey, come now, sit here. Thank you. They decided to give me reunification, which I'm very, very grateful for. So I'm in the process of working that with my son. And like I said, for my daughter, we're in this phase where they keep threatening. I love dogs. They keep you guys no more. They keep threatening to come here to terminate my parental rights, but they haven't done it yet. I don't know why they won't go for guardianship. I've been told by my attorney that my family members will not allow for guardianship, but that's kind of I think where it should go. Um, I'm not going to allow them to just kick me out of my child's life. My son, his attorney actually stop. I love you guys. My son's attorney filed. My son's attorney. My son's attorney filed a motion that would allow for him to be a part of the 2/6 hearing because as a minor, with a sibling, what do you call it? The sibling right that he could have a voice because they were going to exclude. Why? Stop it, Baba. Come here now. Sit down. Nope, touch it. Because they were going to exclude him completely from the process. And
Okay.
he, at 11 years old, was quite very, very vocal. He wasn't going to have it. So he's part of the process, and that's where we're at. I'm in a rebuilding phase. I've had to come back to LA County in order to, work my case because again, testing is involved. This time I contacted the director of the other county, CPS, personally, and talked about my case. She then contacted my caseworker personally and said, we would be more than happy to facilitate this. All you need to do is turn in the referral. And of course, to date, the caseworker has not turned in the referral. So they don't want me to have the opportunity to test, I believe, because they want my daughter. Um, and I'm not giving up without a fight. It has taxed me physically. It's just part of the reason I have the heart condition I have. Um, at 45 years old, um, I'm going to be living in LA County homeless because I can't afford to live here. But I can't afford to not. I can't afford to let them win. So if I have to be here in order to before they're testing, because commuting back and forth, I drive a pretty big car. My car is suffering from the back and forth now. So I'm going to be living here um, in my car until this case is through. I don't have family that I can live with because
Okay.
the family that I can live with, my children are living with. So it's pretty tough, but I know it could always be worse. And I firmly believe that when it's all said and done, that um, I hope that it's all not in vain. Um, it's just a nightmare. I wouldn't wish this nightmare on anybody. So that's where I'm at.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Summer. Well, I want to thank you very much for sharing your story.
Thank you.
Um, and for all the listeners out there, again, call into 888 6582, and Attorney Vincent W. Davis will give you a 30-minute consultation and strategies of how to fight your CPS case and how to win.
I should
Um,
be.
Yep. And so um, I want to thank Summer for coming back. She's been on it twice now, and
Thank you
I
so much, guys.
imagine if you want to come back, you're more than welcome to come back again. Just call in and reschedule it. And then
Okay.
um, to all you listeners out there, thank you for listening, and I'll see you the next time.
Thank you,
And
Bob.
yep, this is
Appreciate it.
Bob Pace signing out.
Bye. Bye. Take care.